The Yanomami village was immersed in tranquility of the forest, where the sound of leaves moving in the wind and the song of birds created a constant melody. The children ran along trails covered with dry leaves. The elders shared stories around a campfire, and the women prepared food and medicine with herbs only they knew. It was an ordinary day in the village, but something was about to break the tribe's calm. Iramari, the young hunter, was respected by all. His strong and agile body was a reflection of the hours spent in the forest, blazing trails and hunting with skill. He was the pride of his family and the village, not only for his skill with the spear, but for the courage and wisdom he demonstrated in every action. However, his greatest treasure was not his strength or reputation. It was Nayara, the daughter of the page. Together, they formed the most admired couple in the tribe. Nayara was a woman of rare beauty, with eyes as deep as a river that wound through the forest, and black hair that seemed to hide the mysteries of the night. Strong, intelligent, and, above all, deeply connected to the spirits of the forest, she had always known that her destiny was intertwined with Iramari's, but there was something she hid, a secret that consumed her from within. Page Tarima, the spiritual leader of the tribe, lived with the constant responsibility of maintaining balance between the people and the spirits. He knew that the peace the village enjoyed was not guaranteed forever. Tarima was a wise, elderly man, with eyes always fixed on the horizon, as if searching for something invisible. His connection with the spirits of the forest was deep and unbreakable. He believed that, deep in his soul, everything followed a cycle, life, death, and renewal, like the seasons of the forest that never cease to turn. Kaori, Iramari's best friend, was a quiet and introspective young man, with a soft appearance, a contemplative look, and a subtle smile. Kaori was the type of person who went unnoticed, but he carried a fire inside that no one could see. He loved Nayara in secret. He didn't dare express his feelings, as he knew she was already promised to Iramari, but something inside Kaori consumed him. His friendship with Iramari was solid, but he felt a constant pain, a tension in the air every time he was near Nayara. Oik, the elder shaman of the tribe, possessed the wisdom of times long past. His eyes had seen more than anyone in the village could comprehend. He observed, analyzed, and felt the flows of the spiritual world with impressive precision. Oik knew, with an instinctive certainty, that something dark was approaching. He couldn't explain it, but the signs were there in the small failures of nature. The bird songs were quieter, the river waters were murky, and the shadows of the forest seemed to move erratically. Something was disturbing the balance he had spent his entire life trying to preserve. The Yanomami village was peaceful. The preparations for the great harvest ceremony were underway, and expectations were high. It was a time for celebration, for unity among the people, and an important rite of thanksgiving to the earth. But even under this veil of harmony, something dark began to form, something that would affect not only Iramari and Nayara's fate, but the entire tribe's. The incident, the mysterious death. The morning began like any other. The sky was clear, and the song of the birds blended with the sound of the wind swaying the treetops. The Yanomami village awoke to a new day, and Iramari prepared for another hunt. He and his companions had planned an expedition to the heart of the forest, where the great animals hid. Iramari, with his skill and courage, was always the leader on hunts, guiding the others with confidence. Nayara, in turn, blessed the journey with her silent prayers, asking the earth to bless their safe return. However, by the evening, what should have been a peaceful routine turned into a tragedy. Iramari did not return. Silence took over the village when the last of the hunters came back, with no sign of Iramari. Fear began to spread, and the voices of concern were drowned by the sound of the drum calling the tribe to gather. Page Tarima, with a serious expression, asked for calm, but his voice trembled slightly. He knew something was deeply wrong, something he couldn't understand. The following morning, after hours of searching, Iramari's body was found, floating in the murky waters of a small tributary. He was pale and motionless, but there was something that made everyone's heart freeze. Strange marks on his neck. They were deep, as if something or someone had squeezed his throat with force, like a sharp weapon. There were no signs of a struggle, but the frozen expression on his face showed silent anguish. The whole tribe gathered around the body, and the silence was absolute, fear mixed with the pain of loss. Tarima, with his eyes closed and mind connected to the spirits of the forest, knew this was not a natural death. Something more was at play. An evil spirit? Or a human presence that dared to challenge the ancestral teachings. Tarima, with sorrow, declared a mourning period for Iramari's death. May the earth receive him, and may the spirits guide his soul, he said, but in his mind, a doubt lingered. Something was out of place. Iramari's death was not a simple hunting accident or fatality of nature. He felt that something darker was behind it. Nayara, upon receiving the news of Iramari's death, collapsed. Her body, once strong and imposing, seemed fragile, like a leaf carried by the wind. She ran to the place where Iramari's body had been laid, and there, in front of everyone, she began to cry. Her sobs were uncontrollable, as if a part of her soul had been torn away. She kneeled beside Iramari, touching his cold skin, searching for a sign of life, but it was too late. He was lost forever. The other members of the tribe, though saddened, kept a respectful distance. But Kaori, Iramari's best friend, couldn't hide the anguish in his eyes. He had approached Nayara, trying to offer comfort, but his gaze was more distant than ever. Deep down, he knew that even though he was beside Nayara, he was merely a shadow of Iramari, never replacing him. While Nayara lamented her loss, Kaori approached her with gentle words, trying to soothe her. "Nayara, I'm so sorry. We're all here for you," he said, but his voice had something strange, as if he were searching for more than just offering comfort. There was a touch of urgency in his presence, a contained desire, but also a slight fear he couldn't hide. Nayara, still absorbed in her grief, looked at Kaori but didn't notice the strange gleam in his eyes. She was distant, lost in confused thoughts. She didn't know if what she felt was merely sorrow or the sense that something else was about to be revealed. Why had Iramari gone into the forest alone? He had always been careful, always respected the hunting laws. Something didn't make sense, but she didn't have the strength to question it at that moment. Kaori, on the other hand, couldn't deny what was going on inside him. He knew that Iramari would never return, and a part of him felt that fate had been cruel to him. He had waited so long for a moment like this, a chance to be by Nayara's side, to be more than just a friend. But that desire was bitter because he knew Iramari, with his strength and kindness, would always be Nayara's true love. When the tribe retreated to their camps, Kaori stayed by Nayara's side, insisting that she rest, but he knew something was wrong, something he couldn't yet understand. He felt, deep in his heart, that Iramari had not died by chance. The forest held secrets, and Iramari's death was just the first sign of something much darker. But he was determined to keep his secret for now, waiting for the right moment to act. Iramari's death had left the village in a deep state of mourning, but also raised more questions than answers. With each passing moment, fear and distrust spread, like a shadow creeping through the forest. Who had caused Iramari's death? And, most importantly, why? These questions would not disappear so easily. And while Kaori grew closer to Nayara, a new chapter in the story was about to begin. A chapter that would bring to light not only hidden secrets, but also betrayals that would shake the very foundation of everything the tribe knew and believed. The investigation, shadows and suspicions. The mourning still lingered over the Yanomami village, but the silence that once accompanied the grief was now broken by a new feeling. Discomfort. Something unsaid, something unresolved. The eyes of everyone seemed to look at the shadows of the forest with new distrust. The mourning ritual was still ongoing, but the events surrounding Iramari's death could not simply be forgotten. There was something more hidden between the lines of this tragedy. Oik, the elder shaman, decided to take action. His spirit connected to the forest was stronger than ever, and something in his heart told him that Iramari's death had not been a mere accident. What he didn't yet know was that the truth was buried deep within the forest, and the spirits, in their whispers, were about to reveal secrets that could forever change the tribe's fate. At dawn, Oik asked the tribe's warriors to accompany him to the place where Iramari's body had been found. The sun was still low, and the forest seemed denser than usual, as if it was hiding something. The scent of damp earth and dry leaves filled the air, but there was something strange that day. The nature seemed silent. Oik, with the calm of a man who had faced many shadows in the spiritual world, observed every detail. His eyes carefully followed the trail, and that's when he found something disturbing, Footprints. They didn't belong to Iramari. They were marks of large, firm feet, but not from an ordinary hunter. The prints were deeper, as if someone had been trying to hide, but left obvious tracks. Oik looked at the warriors around him, his eyes penetrating each of them. They had not noticed anything. He instructed them to follow the footprints, which led them to a clearing near a large fallen trunk. The smell of wet earth still lingered in the air, but the sight of the place was unsettling. The footprints stopped there, but there were no signs of a struggle, just a sense that something or someone had waited for a moment before moving toward the river. The death of Iramari was not an accident, Oik murmured to himself. He knew the forest would not keep its truth hidden much longer. Meanwhile, in the village, the warriors noticed something strange. Kaori, who had always been first to return from hunts, arrived earlier than expected this time. The absence of Iramari had created a void in the tribe, and Kaori, always close to his friend, had distanced himself from the rest of the group, as if carrying an invisible weight. He looked tired, but what the warriors noticed was a haste in his return, as if he was trying to avoid a question and inspection. Kaori claimed to be exhausted from the journey, but his eyes avoided direct contact, and his words seemed disordered. To the warriors, there was something unusual in his behavior, but no one dared to question him. Everyone, in some way, felt uncomfortable with Iramari's loss and feared further revelations. Nayara, in her grief, found herself increasingly consumed by a sense of guilt. The secret she kept in her heart, that night she met with Kaori, now seemed to be eating her from the inside. She couldn't understand what had happened. Why hadn't she warned Iramari about the meeting? She had trusted those moments of fragility too much, and now she found herself torn between the love for Iramari and the feeling of betrayal. She questioned herself. If I had told Iramari everything, would this have been avoided? Kaori, my best friend, was always so close to me, but I never saw the pain in his eyes. Why didn't he tell the truth? Nayara knew there was a shadow between them, but she couldn't touch it, couldn't understand how far betrayal went, or how far her guilt extended. What she felt for Kaori was a platonic love, a friendship so deep it blurred the lines. But could that justify Iramari's death? She didn't want to believe Kaori could be involved, but the fear that something was being hidden consumed her. In the dreams of Shaman Tarima, the forest began to send signs. He was in a trance, his eyes closed, his mind traveling beyond what mortals could comprehend. And it was there in the silence of his spirit that the spirits of the forest manifested. He saw flashes of images, fleeting shadows moving to the dark, a figure with large dark eyes, the face of a hunter, but not Iramari. He heard voices whispering, but the words were unintelligible, as if the spirits wanted to say something but feared revealing too much. What disturbed Tarima the most, however, was a clear vision, a red light, glowing intensely amidst the forest's darkness, a warning light, as if Iramari's own blood had been called to witness his death. He woke from the trance, sweating, feeling the weight of the truth crushing his chest. Iramari had not died just from an accident in the forest. Someone had summoned his death in the forest with its ancestral power, was trying to warn him. Who? Who was with Iramari in the forest? Tarima asked in a low voice, but no one answered. The shaman knew that the search for the truth was just beginning. The spirits had given the first signs, but the forest had more secrets to reveal, and he needed answers before it was too late. With each discovery, the shadow of suspicion grew over Kaori, and as time passed, the bonds of friendship and love began to unravel, giving way to something deeper, darker. The mystery of Iramari's death was far from being solved, and the winds of the forest seemed to bring more questions and answers. The truth was near, but before it could be revealed, more betrayals and secrets would be exposed, forever changing the fate of the Yanomami tribe. The revelation, the hidden truth. The Yanomami village was enveloped in a tense atmosphere, as if the land itself felt the weight of pain and despair. Time seemed suspended, and the shadows of the forest, once so familiar and comforting, now carried a dark weight. The air was heavy, filled with unspoken secrets, and the tribe, which had once seemed united, was now divided by the mystery of Iramari's death. The purification ritual that had been prepared so carefully began, but it was unlike any other. The drums echoed through the village, calling everyone to gather around a central fire. Shaman Tarima, as always, led the rituals with seriousness and wisdom, but today there was an expression of concern in his eyes. He knew the moment of revelation was near, that the spirits of the forest had made their intentions clear. Nayara, still in mourning, felt an overwhelming weight on her heart. She knew she needed to release what had been buried in her chest. The secret that had tormented her for days had now become unbearable. In a gesture of courage, she approached the fire, surrounded by the tribe, who watched her with attention. The silence was absolute. The flames danced in the wind, illuminating the tense faces and shadowy figures of the village. I have something to confess. Nayara's voice trembled, but she knew she had to speak. The night before Iramari's death, I met Kaori in secret. We talked, and I didn't know what to do. I was lost in my pain, and he was there to support me. I should never have let this happen. Everyone's eyes were fixed on her, and a wave of murmurs spread through the crowd. Nayara's confession, though marked by pain, was not what they had expected. There was more, so much more to be said. Nayara took a deep breath and continued. I loved Iramari deeply, but something inside me broke that night. Kaori, he had always been by my side, and something inside me made me give in, but I didn't know that what would happen the next morning would be the end of everything. What happened? I can't carry this alone. The silence grew denser. Nayara, with tears in her eyes, looked at Kaori, who was now slowly approaching, with a dark expression on his face. He could no longer hide the truth. His heart raced, and the weight of guilt crushed him, but he knew he could not escape anymore. Kaori raised his head, looking at the tribe, and finally spoke. His voice was hoarse, filled with regret and unresolved jealousy. I was consumed by jealousy. Those words came from his lips as a bitter confession. Iramari was a man she loved, the man she chose. And I couldn't bear it. That night, I saw the pain in Nayara's eyes, and something inside me broke. She gave me the attention I had always wanted, but I knew it would never be enough to replace him. The tribe stared at Kaori, shock taking over everyone. He continued, each word harder than the last. The morning Iramari went hunting, I couldn't control myself. I found him in the forest, alone, and our words turned into shouts. I challenged him, felt the rage take over me. Jealousy, pain, it all came together inside me. And in the heat of the moment, when his back was to me, I pushed him against a rock. He hit his head, fell, and didn't move anymore. The air grew cold, and the impact of Kaori's words reverberated in every person present. What everyone feared had now become a painful reality. Kaori, Iramari's best friend, had been responsible for his death. The tribe fell into deep shock. What had seemed like a mysterious death, an unexplained tragedy, was now revealed to be a story of betrayal, jealousy, and violence. Nayara's eyes, once filled with pain and guilt, were now marked by a mix of disbelief and anger. She looked at Kaori with silent hatred, but also with immense pain, as if the whole world had collapsed on her. This man, whom she had considered a friend, had destroyed everything, and more than that, had destroyed the future she and Iramari had built together. I don't know what to say. Kaori whispered, tears falling uncontrollably from his face. I was out of my mind. I never wanted this to happen. I begged for forgiveness from the bottom of my heart. Condemn me, kill me, but don't make me live with this weight. The tribe remained silent, Kaori's words echoing in the air, but the weight of Yanomami law was clear. The tribe's code of honor did not tolerate violence between brothers, especially when that violence resulted in the death of a respected hunter beloved by all. Shaman Tarima, his face marked by pain and wisdom, was the first to break the silence. He approached Kaori, his eyes heavy but firm. The truth has been revealed. Jealousy, betrayal, and violence destroyed an honorable man. Now, the tribe's justice must be carried out. He paused, the pain of Iramari's loss still echoing in his voice. Kaori, you cannot simply be forgiven for your actions. The life you took must be paid for in some way. You will have to face the laws of the tribe. Kaori's heart raced. He knew what this meant. Punishment according to the Yanomami village laws was severe and relentless, but he could no longer escape. There was nowhere left to run. The tribe was divided. Some Their eyes filled with rage, wanted revenge, but others, with more compassionate gaze, hoped for a more lenient judgment. If possible, the flames of the fire danced more intensely as the tension grew. Kaori knelt, his head lowered, awaiting his fate. He knew the sentence was coming, and that he deserved whatever the tribe decided. The silence of the village became an unbearable weight, and deep down, Kaori knew that guilt would never leave him, no matter what happened. Iramari's tragedy was now resolved, but the effects of this devastating revelation would echo for a long time. Iramari's death and Kaori's betrayal altered the course of everyone's story in the village, and as the tribe began to evaluate the consequences, the forest, once a symbol of life and connection, now seemed like a darker and more distant place than ever. The outcome, justice and redemption. The Yanomami village was in a state of uncertainty, as if nature itself had held its breath, waiting for the final resolution of a tragedy that had deeply marked the hearts of all. The trees, which had long witnessed the flourishing and decay of life in the tribe, now seemed more distant, darker. The wind, which once carried ancestral stories, whispered secrets of loss and pain. The death of Iramari and the betrayal of Kaori had cast an undeniable shadow. With grave and steady eyes, Shaman Tarima remained silent for long minutes after Kaori's judgment. He had done what he knew to be right, but his heart was torn. Iramari was not only a respected hunter and fiancé of his daughter Nayara, but also a soul deeply connected to the tribe's traditions. His death had marked not just a personal loss, but the weakening of something the Yanomami considered sacred. The unity and harmony among brothers. At last, Tarima withdrew into the forest, where the silence enveloped him like a cloak. He had decided to consult the spirits of the forest, as was tradition in moments of great sorrow and conflict. The ritual was long and filled with tension, and in the midst of the dark night, with the full moon illuminating the land, the shaman sought answers in the shadows of the trees and the whispers of the wind. The spirits, who had long guided his tribe's path, responded with a deep and penetrating murmur. When Tarima returned, his gaze was heavier, and his voice, firm, carried the authority of the answers he brought. "The tribe cannot carry the weight of this betrayal," he said, his eyes fixed on Kaori, who waited with slumped shoulders and eyes clouded by guilt. "Kaori, you must pay for what you've done. There is no vengeance here, only the fulfillment of the sacred law. You are banished from our land, condemned to wander the forest alone. Your journey will be long and solitary until nature decides your fate." Tarima's words echoed with the strength of an irreversible sentence. Kaori, with teary eyes, had no strength to resist. He knew he deserved this fate. What he had done to Iramari, his friend, his brother, was unthinkable, and even in his pain, he accepted the punishment. Kaori's eyes, once filled with the fire of anger and jealousy, were now empty, as if his soul had already departed. Kaori slowly stood and, without saying a word, walked to the edge of the village. His departure was not marked by screams or violence. Only the soft sound of his feet on the wet earth and the wind passing between the trees remained. He moved away, feeling the weight of each step, aware that he would never return to the place he had once called home. As Kaori left, Nayara remained silent. Her eyes were dull, as if she had seen enough for a lifetime. The grief in her heart was immense, but there was something more, something she could not deny: guilt. She didn't know how she had allowed her love for Kaori to blur with the pain of losing Iramari. And now, she found herself lost, unsure how to find her way back. Over the following days, the village underwent a silent transformation. Nayara, consumed by pain and guilt, decided to follow a different path. She no longer wanted to be just Iramari's fiancée. She no longer wanted to be just the daughter of the shaman. In silence, she left the village to seek something that could bring peace to her soul. She became a healer, dedicating herself to the deep learning of plants, herbs, and remedies the earth offered. She spent her days among the rivers and forests, always seeking relief from the suffering she carried, trying to find a cure for the pain that tormented her. But no matter how much she immersed herself in healing others, Nayara never managed to heal her own heart. She sought answers in the herbs, but the deepest questions continued to arise, unanswered. She knew she would never be able to erase the weight of her betrayal, and that somewhere, the memory of Iramari would continue to haunt her, no matter how much she tried to escape it. That same night, Oik, the elder shaman, prepared a ritual for Iramari's spirit to find peace. He knew that the soul of the hunter, though a victim, was still bound to the pain of betrayal. The ritual was held by the riverbank, where Iramari's body had been found. The flames of the fire illuminated Oike's face as he chanted ancient songs, asking the spirits to release Iramari's spirit and guide him to eternal rest. The ritual lasted for hours, and the forest seemed suspended in a deep silence. As Oike's chants intensified, a gentle wind began to blow, carrying dry leaves across the ground. It was as if the earth itself was responding to the shaman's call. At the height of the ritual, the full moon hid behind the clouds, and a strange peace settled in the air. In the final moment, Oik raised his arms and, with one last prayer, let out a cry of farewell. Iramari's spirit was finally released. When the ritual ended, the village seemed to return to its natural state, but no one knew it would ever be the same. The loss of Iramari, Kaori's betrayal, and the weight of Nayara's grief and guilt will remain etched in the souls of the tribe. The forest, which once seemed a home of life and prosperity, now carried in its whispers the echo of betrayal, like a lament that would never fade. And as the village began to organize for the next day, with the hope that still remained, the forest, ever vigilant, continued to guard its secrets, now darker, quieter, as if the winds carried the lost voices of a story that could never be forgotten. The Yanomami tribe would never forget the cost of betrayal and loss. And though silence had returned, it was never the same.